White House with Nicole Wallace starts right now.
Hi, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in New York. What one Democratic senator calls slut-shaming tops the accused child molester on the ballot today in Alabama for our lead story. The slut-shamer in question, none other than Donald J. Trump, with a tweet he fired off this morning. Quote, lightweight Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a total flunky for Chuck Schumer, and someone who would come to my office begging for campaign contributions not so long ago and would do anything for them, is now in the ring fighting against Trump. Very disloyal to Bill and crooked. Used. An inexplicable word of placement of use. Sorry, that threw me. Senator Gillibrand responded.
It was a sexist smear attempting to silence my voice. And I will not be silenced on this issue. Neither will the women who stood up to the president yesterday, and neither will the millions of women who have been marching since the Women's March to stand up against policies they do not agree with.
And here's Senator Elizabeth Warren's tweet calling out the president for slut-shaming a sitting U.S. senator. Quote, are you really trying to bully, intimidate, and slut-shame Senator Gillibrand? Do you know who you're picking a fight with? Good luck with that, real Donald Trump. Here's how White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders tried to defend the tweet at today's briefing.
Many, including the senator, thinks that it's about sexual innuendos.
I think only if your mind is in the gutter would you have read it that way. And so no, Hunter.
No, it's not. When he went to say, what he said was open, and it was not mind in the
He's
gutter.
obviously talking about political partisan games that people often play and the broken system that he's talked about repeatedly. This isn't new. This isn't a new sentiment. This isn't new terminology. He's used it several times before. As I said a few minutes ago, he's used it several times before, referencing men of both parties, in fact. And so I think that if you look back at the past comments he's made, it was very clear what his reference was.
Your boss talks about grabbing women in that, but we're the ones with our minds in the gutter. I get it. Let's get to our reporters and guests. From the Washington Post, White House reporter Ashley Parker. With us from Birmingham, former federal prosecutor Joyce Vance, now a law professor at the University of Alabama. At the table with us, New York City Council Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, MSNBC contributors Steve Schmidt and Charlie Sykes. You guys are like Bono. You've dropped all the other, like no other information needed. You're just your names. And Jason Johnson, politics editor for The Root and an MSNBC analyst. Ashley Parker, let me start with you. Sarah Huckabee Sanders has a really difficult job, full stop. Today's performance was ridiculous.
She does have a very difficult job, and I have to say she does a good job every day of keeping a very straight face and sort of going out and expressing disbelief that anyone would have ever possibly interpreted what the president said or tweeted in what seems to be exactly the way he intended it to be interpreted. But yes, I think today sort of defied a little bit of credulity in terms of saying, and she can claim that he did not mean it to be demeaning, but there's clearly a sexual innuendo, and there's certainly a reasonable way to interpret that tweet, even if she wants to say that's not what he meant.
Let's put it back up, because it's worthy of some sentence diagramming, some discussion of why he refers to himself in the third person, and that placement of used in all caps. But here's what he wrote. Lightweight Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a total flunky for Chuck Schumer, and someone who would come to my office begging, in quotes, suggesting that there's something special about begging for campaign contributions not so long ago and would do anything for them. I'm sorry. Steve Schmidt, there is no other way to interpret what he inferred.
It is what it is. I do want to dissent for just a moment. She doesn't have a difficult job. She has an easy job. Tell the truth to the American people. She's an assistant to the President of the United States. She swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States, which she disgraces every day as she serially lies hour after hour after hour every day. This is what it is clearly a sexual innuendo from the President of the United States targeting the junior senator from the state of New York. Another moment of disgrace for this president on a long list. And it bears mentioning, just for a moment, how abnormal this is. The assault, the constant assault on the dignity and the majesty of the office of the President of the United States. And this is exactly the reason the President of the United States is not welcome in the United Kingdom because his presence standing next to Her Majesty the Queen is such an affront to her dignity that it has united the fractious parties of Great Britain in opposition to his setting foot on British soil because of stuff like this. Just a constant degrading of his office.
Charlie,
Shameful.
Charlie, do you agree?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm always reminded of Hanlon's razor, which says, never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by stupidity. On the other hand, what Donald Trump is doing here, this is one of the first volleys that I think you're going to be seeing more of against the Me Too movement. You know, we've seen the willingness of Republicans to line up and try to discredit the investigation by Robert Mueller, which would have seemed inconceivable even a few months ago. If, in fact, the focus is now going to turn to Donald Trump and women are going to be speaking up and their stories are going to be taken seriously, this administration, this president is going to push back and he's going to attack those women. He's going to attack their credibility. And it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not Republicans who've been willing to enable him on so many other issues are going to go along with this attack. So, but that tweet I see as part of this campaign that's coming.
Joyce, it seems to me that the political scandal that's engulfed this White House since day one has been about possible, I believe now obvious, coordination, contact, and collusion with Russia. In attacking Democrats over investigating Russia, that was a faraway place. The contacts were with Russians. And attacking people for investigating coordination and contact with a foreign power, albeit an American adversary, was something that maybe happened over here. The Me Too movement has engulfed just about every industry in American life. It's engulfed this company. And the corporate culture right now is to purge every company of its harassers and then to investigate and to bring in outside investigators and investigate the enablers, to ask the question, who knew? What did you know about said harasser? How do any of these women or men leave the Trump White House and find jobs in corporate America?
The president seems to have had a little bit of a jump the shark moment this morning. I think he may have just gone so far that no one can really take this with seriousness, and that certainly rubs off on the credibility of everyone working in this White House. You know, I know you worked under George W. Bush. I worked under President Obama. I always felt that my integrity at the end of the day was the only thing that I could take away with me from the administration, and we all valued that and really made sure that we tried to serve the American people every day. Increasingly, this administration just leaves people shaking their heads. There's no doubt about what that tweet this morning went. No reasonable person could read it in any other way. With all due respect to Sarah Sanders' belief that my mind is in the gutter, I think that's clearly where the president's was this morning. I mean,
not just his mind. I mean, there are 16 credible allegations. His hands and other parts of his body have spent time in the gutter. I mean, this is a man with I think, 15 women who've accused him of sexual misconduct. And his spokesperson goes to the podium, which is supposed to be a place from which the truth is told, and tells us that we have our mind in the gutter.
I mean, he's definitely demonstrating each and every day with more certainty why he is unfit for the presidency. But obviously our democracy, right, and our institutions that defend this democracy are under attack when he is trying to, cloud the credibility of media, anybody that questions his credibility. But first of all, let me say I'm very proud, my Senator Gillibrand, in terms of how she has stood up against him and against his misogyny. And he's trying to drag the presidency into that misogyny and into the gutter that she's accusing us of trying to be dragged into. So anyone that is there to defend him, as Huckabee is trying to do, is colluding with him and colluding to really try to destabilize this democracy, because that is what we're seeing each and every day in the attacks that are being thrown to the media in terms of the credibility. Anyone that tries to question his legitimacy and his collusion with Russia and anything else, every day it's a new attack. But she has stood strong. I think it's incredible to see also that there are male senators that have asked for him to resign, and yet they have not been attacked. He chooses to attack Senator Gillibrand as one of the few women that has spoken up.
Jason, I think we have it. I think there are close to 60 Democrats who have called for the president's resignation, and maybe more than 100 who have called for an investigation into claims of sexual misconduct on the part of the president. I think people have thought for a long time that this Russia investigation was closing in, and that's the sort of the topic that is the president's trigger. Based on these tweets this morning, I think there was another one too. The president sort of venting and steaming that, here it is. Trump's first tweet was, despite thousands of hours wasted and many millions of dollars spent, the Democrats have been unable to show any collusion with Russia. So now they're moving on to the false accusations and fabricated stories of women who I don't know and haven't met. Fake news. You know, Kristen Welker had a superb and pointed line of questioning that for some of these women who have accused Donald Trump of misconduct, there are photos of Donald Trump with the women.
Yeah. Look, he's lying, right? And none of this ever surprises me that he's lying. I think it's fine that the Democrats are asking for an investigation, but we have to go back to the fact that he's the elected president of the United States. He won the Electoral College. We knew this stuff last year. We knew as much, if not more, about him last year than people know about Roy Moore now. And he still got elected president of the United States. So the issue is not so much just calling for him to step down on things that people were aware of and still put him in office. The issue is to not let the poison that emanates from his Twitter fingers affect other institutions of government. Look, if he was not the president, every time I see something like this happen, I always think, all right, let's just put this in, Dunder Mifflin, right? Let's put it in the regular office. If someone's like, every time this person comes to me for a stapler, she's willing to do anything to get it, we all would know what that means. The fact that he tries to sexualize regular office behavior. Look, people come to you and beg you for money. She was a New York senator, and you try and turn that into something sexual. We just need to make sure we can contain it to his wretched mind and Twitter fingers and not let that affect the rest of the institutions. That's what I hope.
Ashley Parker, I think some of the folks that plan to leave this White House, having served 365 days and 365 days only, have made their announcements public. Others that I'm sure you and I both know of haven't yet. I wonder if sort of defending Donald Trump and sort of having to toe the line, which changes. I mean, he never had any contact with Russians, which changed. We now know of 11 contacts with Russians. I mean, I wonder if the same sort of thing that wore them down and watching the self-destructive behavior from the president's Twitter feed on the Russia probe, are we at the beginning of that chapter when it comes to sexual harassment?
I think we don't quite know yet. You are right that there are a number of people who have announced they're leaving, and there are a number more who we're hearing are leaving, and it's not public yet. But if we've seen one thing, it's that people in this administration have found, or at least some people have found, any number of ways to sort of justify and stomach staying on. I would point you to Charlottesville, for instance, but sort of justify they didn't like these comments. They came out and publicly said they didn't like these comments, and yet they stayed in the administration. And one thing is there's a little bit of godlike thinking that, yes, what he's doing is bad, but if I wasn't there sort of protecting the American people from this president, it would be worse. And that is one justification we're seeing, and I don't know if it will apply to now the Me Too movement. I want to ask we talked about this a little bit before the show, and I want to put you both on the record. Steve, you counsel a lot of companies in your day job. Do you think that people who are now calling Donald Trump's accusers liars, people who would be viewed in any corporation as enablers for a known sexual harasser, how do they go out into the workforce and try to find jobs at credible corporations?
They don't, and they're not going to. Yeah. They're not hireable, unemployable.
And this is the key point that you're making here, though. It is this double standard. We're in this amazing cultural moment where you have one standard in the world of entertainment and the world of corporate America, where careers are ended.
Restaurant industry, sports industry, television.
We have a higher moral, ethical standard for comedians than we do for the president of the United States right now. So the question is whether or not this is sustainable, whether or not the fact that we are in this Me Too cultural moment where the private sector is dealing with this very seriously. But the public sector, I mean, think where we're at right now. We have the President of the United States credibly accused by more than a dozen women. Roy Moore is about to be elected perhaps to the United States Senate despite these allegations. So can we really separate out the overall culture from our political world? Because that's what Donald Trump is going to try to do, to say that we need to have a completely different standard.
Real quick.
One of the things I think Look, we already had laws on the books about this.
Right.
I think Me Too is about people actually enforcing what was already there. It's not 25 years ago where people are like, I don't know how to deal with someone grabbed. There are rules that say you can't treat people this way. You should be fired. There should be memos and reprimands and everything else like that. It's just nice to see people actually using them now. It'd be nice if they use them in the White House, too.
All right, we're just hitting pause. No one's going anywhere. When we come back, could sexual harassment, not Russia, be the scandal that rocks the Trump presidency to its core? Also ahead, we'll show you the frenzied final hours of campaigning in Alabama and some comments from Roy Moore's